Captain Joseph Manchester was born in 1760 in Dartmouth, Massachusetts. Shortly after he was born, his family relocated to Rhode Island, where he spent most of his early life. At just 17 years old, Joseph was excited to join the fight against the British for our independence and enlisted in the Continental Army in May of 1777. However, he contracted smallpox around the same time and wasn't well enough to go until that fall. Once he recovered, he marched with a group of invalids, soldiers that were recovering from illness or injury, to Mount Holly, New York, where he joined his regular company. While Joseph would eventually see some pretty awful things on the battlefield, he probably considered himself fairly lucky that next summer as he listened to tales told by his new fellow soldiers who had just joined them from the infamous Valley Forge. Those guys had spent the winter of 1777 and 78 there with over 12,000 soldiers, along with other men and women to help them. Temperatures swung wildly between freezing and thawing, with rain and snow making life even harder. Their supplies were scarce, and although locals helped where they could, clothing remained in short supply. By March, nearly 3,000 of the 12,000 men were listed as unfit for duty due to inadequate clothing. Despite their hardships, the soldiers transformed the camp into the fourth largest city in the colonies, building 1,500 log huts and over 2 miles of fortifications. Valley Forge became a diverse community of officers and enlisted men, Native Americans and European immigrants, rich and poor alike, all speaking different languages and worshiping in the newly formed churches. It was an awful winter, but they endured. And by spring, they were ready to fight. Joseph served under Colonel Christopher Green and saw action in several key battle engagements, the most notable being the Battle of Monmouth in New Jersey in June of 1778. It was a brutally hot day, and General Charles Lee didn't have faith in his men attacking the British General Charles Cornwallis. The tide turned, however, when General George Washington arrived on the field, who very much did believe in them. He relieved Lee of his command and led the counterattack. The battle raged on until 6 p.m. A general known as Mad Anthony Wayne was pushing for a continued assault, but Washington, however, knew his troops were, in his words, beat out with heat and fatigue. Luckily for them, the British snuck out overnight, retreating back to New York City. After the battle, Joseph and his unit returned to Narragansett, Rhode Island. In the spring of 1779, he was assigned to serve as a waiter to Colonel Ephraim Bowen, the Deputy Quartermaster General for Rhode Island. In military terms, a waiter wasn't a food server, but more of a personal assistant to an officer, sometimes more than one. His duties included caring for personal belongings, writing correspondence, running errands, and remaining combat ready the entire time. He served Colonel Bowen for 10 months and completed his service with the Continental Army after 3 years and 2 months. Upon returning home, Joseph married Martha Tabor in 1782, and they had one son named Gideon, but sadly Martha passed away not long after he was born. Joseph then married Martha's little sister Hannah, and the family relocated to what is now Lake Moraine in Madison, New York. Together, he and Hannah had 3 daughters, but tragically their next son, Charles, died at a young age. Because of the family connection, his son Gideon's half-sisters were also his cousins, making for a uniquely close-knit family. Joseph and Hannah lived in Madison for over 40 years. During that time, he received a soldier's pension of $80 a year, equivalent to just over $2,000 today, in recognition of his service to the American cause. He passed away in 1841 at the age of 81. His legacy lived on, though, in his daughter Electa, who was considered a true daughter by the Daughters of the American Revolution. She remained an active member of the organization until her death, 120 years after her father had first taken up arms in the Revolutionary War.